Okay, we are rolling. We are rolling, brother. Champions of Champions boxing talk here. Well, first of all, I want to wish you all a happy Christmas. I hope it was a good one. And a brilliant new year. Hey, really, it's the right time to make this video, I think. Fighter of the decade. Do you know, I just saw an article that said scientifically Roy Jones Jr. was the best fighter of all time. It had different ways of measuring it up. But the problem is, they said it was a science. Well, what do we think this guy's scientific achievements are? The only guy in history to win world titles in 8 weight classes. The only fighter in history to win lineal titles in 5 weight classes. I made a mistake there. In fact, he's the only fighter in history to win world titles in 8 weight classes. The only fighter in history to win welterweight titles in 4 separate occasions. The only fighter to be welterweight champion after age 40. So let's go through that again. The only fighter in history to win titles in 8 different weight classes. The only fighter in history to win lineal titles in 5 different weight classes. The only fighter in history to win a version of the welterweight crown 4 times. The oldest welterweight champion in history to win the welterweight crown. What does science say about that guy's achievements? On to Floyd Mayweather, right? This guy at age 36 beat Canelo Alvarez. He beat Miguel Cotto earlier in the decade. He's beaten, he got the victory over Manny Pacquiao, right? He was a champion in 5 weight classes himself. The lineal champion in 4 weight classes himself. To me, I don't know. I think that according to the science that's running around in my head, Manny Pacquiao and Floyd Mayweather are better than Roy Jones Jr. I think ESPN got it completely spot on when they mentioned Floyd and Manny being above Roy Jones Jr. in the top 25 best fighters of the last 25 years. Let's face it, science itself sometimes is run by people. And science itself sometimes has an agenda. I'll give you an example. If 100 people saw a man, or claimed to have saw a man, commit a crime in the street, and that same 100 people testified in court about this man's crime, alleged crime, do you know that guy would go to jail, even without any physical evidence? Yet we've got 1,000 people that claim to have seen a huge unknown animal living in Loch Ness. Some of these people are very sane and lucid, by the way. And you know what science says to these people? You're mad. Basically, you could put all the equations together you want, but the human beings have put these together. It's not an exact science. Science these days wants to have their cake and eat it. In other words, they have to be right, the 100 witnesses that saw the man commit a crime, despite there being no evidence, physical evidence, but yet the people that see the beast in Loch Ness are either mad or liars. Well, which one is it? Yes, Roy Jones does have his accomplishments, but I just think Manny Pacquiao, when you weigh the data up, which data is also a science, has greater ones. And by the way, I've got a lot of listeners, who are Filipinos and Manny Pacquiao fans. Now, Manny Pacquiao was a student of the science, the sweet science. And he used to watch, in the Philippines when he was younger, old VHS tapes of his favourite fighters. He knows the sport right through, even to today's fighters. He could talk about all your Errol Spencer, your Terence Crawford, your Canelo Alvarez, your Triple G, etc. So, Manny will retire one day. And for you guys who are subscribed to my channel, feel free to watch other videos made on other fighters, because Manny would want you to do that. He would not want your love of boxing to end when his career in boxing ends. So when I make videos, this is for the Filipino fans, about other fighters, get involved, watch, listen, get another guy's opinion. It would be much appreciated from me. And of course, Manny Pacquiao being a student of the sport, he would want his fans to do that. But back to this fighter of the decade. This is how we're going to measure it. Floyd Mayweather, early in the decade, as I said, beat Miguel Cotto. That was a phenomenal win. He beat Shane Mosley when Mosley was still a world champion. Maybe Mosley had seen better days, but it was a good, decisive win, despite being hurt early. The best of the wins was obviously when he beat Canelo Alvarez. Now, Canelo Alvarez, yes, you might say he was at a catch weight, but he came in that ring huge. He was like a man mountain compared with Floyd Mayweather. And Floyd Mayweather beat him handsomely. There was no way that was a majority decision. Floyd then went on and defeated Marcus Maidana, and then got the victory over Manny Pacquiao, which is a massive signature name in himself, right? And then beat Andre Berto, and that was really the last professional boxer he fought. So Floyd's career only went to half the decade, right? Just keeping that in mind for a second. On to Canelo Alvarez. Did he really beat Golovkin? There's nothing definitive there. People argue more that Golovkin beat him definitively in that first fight. The second fight was close, but whoever you ask, nobody's going to be clear that Canelo won. Was that a definitive win? Not really, right? He got definitively beaten by Floyd Mayweather, as I've just said, right? The Lara fight could have gone either way, guys. The Cotto fight was maybe a win, but it was nowhere near as wide as that. And I had suspicions big time of the Kovalev victory. Canelo has become a 4-division world champion, which is a massive achievement in itself, right? So let's not take that away from him. Let's go on to Manny Pacquiao. Now, his record says that he's been beaten in this decade to Tim Bradley, to Floyd Mayweather, to Marquez, and to Jeff Horn. Well, we all know at least 2 of them defeats are probably absolute nonsense. Manny Pacquiao in this decade beat Timothy Bradley 3 times, right? And Timothy Bradley went on to be a top 3 pound-for-pound fighter. Pacquiao beat Timothy Bradley once when Tim Bradley was ranked 3rd in the world on Ring Magazine and won the WBO welterweight crown. He then beat Timothy Bradley again when Timothy Bradley was ranked in the top 10, around 9 pound for pound. And Manny Pacquiao, in that victory, became the only fighter ever to win lineal titles in 5 different weight classes. That was the fight that clinched it, right? Pacquiao beat also Shane Mosley, dropped Shane Mosley. Manny Pacquiao was not hurt in that Mosley fight. Mosley, when was the last time we seen Shane Mosley on the seat of his pants? Floyd didn't do it. Pacquiao dropped him, hurt him. Mosley was on the verge of quitting in that fight, apparently, right? He had a close win over Marquez in that decade, and he won his 8th division world title, the record clincher, against Antonio Margarito, who weighed in at, I think, 17 pounds heavier than Manny Pacquiao come fight night. That was achieved in this decade. And then, another big one. Manny Pacquiao at age 40 defeats an undefeated guy in Keith Thurman, who was the WBA super welterweight champion at the time, right? Top 3, as I said, welterweights in the world. He had beaten guys on record, like Danny Garcia, Sean Porter, etc., he defeated a very much improved Josecito Lopez before he fought Manny. Just look at Lopez's last fight and how he's improved under Robert Garcia. That guy effectively retired John Molina, right? Keith Thurman was 10 years younger than 40-year-old Manny Pacquiao, and Manny Pacquiao was the first guy to beat him and then become the oldest welterweight world champion ever, right? And that was done this year, guys, near the end of the decade. Now, some of you will automatically say, well, Floyd beat Manny Pacquiao. Floyd. But hang on a minute. As I've said, Floyd has only fought for half this decade. It's what you do overall in a decade. Let's face it, right? Floyd Mayweather last beat a professional boxer in 2015. You can't count Conor McGregor. That guy's not a boxer. But let's go from the night, or I should say after Manny Pacquiao come back after the Floyd Mayweather loss. He beat Tim Bradley, a younger fighter. Jesse Vargas was years younger, right? Then he went to Australia, and alright, I think Pacquiao beat Jeff Horn. Many do. But what Pacquiao's done consistently is fought out of his home nation. He's never fought in the Philippines in recent times. That fight was in Australia. It wasn't even in America. Floyd Mayweather has never ventured outside America. Not this decade, not the decade before. So it has to count for something. One judge had Jeff Horn win that fight 9 rounds to 3. Absolute joke, in my opinion. I think Pacquiao won that fight, right? But let's face it, fighting Jeff Horn over in Australia is far more credible than fighting Conor McGregor. Even if you did lose to Jeff Horn, going the distance with Jeff Horn is better than beating Conor McGregor, right? Because Jeff Horn, alright, he does do a lot of things I don't agree with, but that guy's a warrior. That guy's an absolute warrior. Did you guys watch his last fight? He dropped to middleweight, Michael Zarafa, twice. Come through all sorts, went to hell and back. You know, his determination is exemplary. And as I said, you put Conor McGregor in there as a boxer with Jeff Horn would smash him up. But I think Pacquiao beat Jeff Horn, right? But the fact that he went outside of his comfort zone, and he's done that consistently, is a good merit mark in itself. The fact that Floyd Mayweather didn't and never has, well, it leaves an asterisk, in my opinion. On to the next, the comeback. Manny Pacquiao retires Lucas Matisse. Beats him up so badly, stops him, that Lucas Matisse never fights again. And Pacquiao wins the WBA regular welterweight title. Now, people are saying, well, that doesn't count. Well, then Canelo must only be a 3-division weight world champion then. Because if you're going to take that belt away from Manny Pacquiao, you have to do the same with Canelo. Because Canelo won the super middleweight title when he beat Rocky Fielding, who was the WBA regular champion at super middleweight. Right? So be consistent. If it's not going to count for Manny, it shouldn't count for Canelo. So Canelo, in your book, if you're one of those critics, is a 3-weight world champion. He's a 4-weight world champion to me, but I'm counting it for Canelo and for Manny in this instance, right? So be consistent no matter where your stance lies. Don't include it for Canelo and take it away from Manny, because you're a hypocrite if you do that, right? But anyway, he retires Lucas Matisse. He beats Adrian Broner. And then he beats Keith Thurman to become the oldest welterweight world titleist ever. Ever, right? And as I said, Keith Thurman was years younger. Do you know what they've all got in common? The wins that Manny Pacquiao's had since the Floyd Mayweather fight. They're all younger. Years younger, some even up to a decade younger. All of these things have to play a part in judging things. Now, Canelo was much younger than Floyd Mayweather. Yes. Right? But we have to also consider Manny Pacquiao is consistently fighting outside his comfort zone, outside of the Philippines. But he's also the only welterweight champion to hold a welterweight title on 4 different occasions. And you know something? He's not even a welterweight. Think about that. He's not even a welterweight. 41 years of age, being the WBA welterweight champion. Now, will Terence Crawford be that at 41? Right? Think about it. Will Errol Spence, God bless him, I wish him well after his accident, be that at 41? Will there be a champion of any kind at 41? Because I'm going to tell you, the guy I spoke about earlier, Roy Jones, he was well done at the top level by the age of 40 or 41. We're still talking about Manny Pacquiao fighting Danny Garcia, Sean Porter, the big boys. At 41, he's still the premier name currently fighting in the welterweight division. After the win against Keith Thurman at age 40, Manny Pacquiao re-entered the Ring Magazine Top 10 pound-for-pound fighters. Will any of those guys be there at 41? It's all to be seen. But the reason why I have Canelo behind Floyd, they've put Canelo right now, pound-for-pound number 1. But Floyd beat that guy so convincingly. That's Ring Magazine's pound-for-pound number 1 boy right now. I don't rank Canelo pound-for-pound number 1, but they do. But Floyd Mayweather, there was no disputing Floyd beating him. None. There's big disputes, though, over some of Canelo's big wins. Big disputes. Right? Big disputes. If you get a draw against Canelo Alvarez, they're really telling you beat him. So basically, he's at least got 2 defeats on there. One was to Golovkin. One was to Floyd Mayweather, clearly. And they're all talking about Triple G. Oh, he must go up in weight. He must go up in weight. Well, listen. Canelo Alvarez has just won a title at light heavyweight. So you know what that means. Gennady Golovkin beat the light heavyweight champion of the world. Right? So why does he have to go there? Think about that. And at least, even if you did think it was a draw, Gennady Golovkin, who is only a middleweight, got a draw against the light heavyweight champion. Canelo is never the smaller man in his fights. I don't care what anybody tells me, but Pacquiao is. Pacquiao is. You know, they talk about Canelo being a 4-weight world champion. Did Floyd Mayweather not become a 5-weight world champion? Did he not retire one? I'm not saying he did it this decade, but overall, think about that, right? Canelo's gone up all these weights. Yeah, Floyd and Manny did. Manny went up 8 weight divisions, right? And Pacquiao and Mayweather have got titles that there are no questions about. You know, take away the regular title from Manny Pacquiao. He's still got Ring Magazine and lineal titles and ABC titles, major ABC titles in 8 weight divisions. Same with Floyd. Real major titles. I'm not saying that the regular title isn't a major title, but it's, you know, people argue about different things on that issue. But let's just disinclude it. Let's not include it. Floyd still has more major titles. In fact, as I said, Canelo would only be a 3-division weight world champion. Right? So, it is a good time to make this video, Fighter of the Decade. But for me, Pacquiao lost, you know, he lost to Floyd, and it's clearly a loss when you get knocked out to Marquez. And I'm not going to go into all the controversies. But because Pacquiao, as I said, He beat Margarito in 2010, but he's also just beat Keith Thurman in 2019, and he's been fighting consistently. Great opposition, younger opposition to this point now, all the way through the decade. Floyd did it for half the decade, right? I still think Floyd's half a decade is more legit than Canelo's full decade. Just being honest, that's my opinion. But the fighter of the decade for me is Manny Pacquiao. And why? Consistency. Consistency. As I said, comparing it with Roy Jones before. It's about what you do over a whole career. Now, over a decade, it's about what you do for the whole decade. So for me, Manny Pacquiao should be the first fighter, apart from Sugar Ray Robinson, to be fighter of the decade for 2 decades in a row. Isn't that staggering? He's probably at least going to end up second. At worst. At worst, he's going to be second. So to be in the top 2 fighters of the decade for 20 years, that 2 decades is 20 years, is astounding for a smaller guy as well. And to be winning, you know, at 41, Pacquiao is more of a boxer, more of a thinker these days than he was years ago when he was destroying opponents, mowing them down. But still to this day, a lot of his game is based on offense, effort and energy. He's not a Bernard Hopkins. He's not a Floyd Mayweather. Those fighters, most of the time outlast the guys that are only slightly offensive. And there Pacquiao is outlasting Floyd Mayweather, who has taken a lot less punishment, whose style is more about being preserved. And yet there's Pacquiao, who for at least half of this decade was a mowing machine, still can mow people down. Ask Keith Thurman, ask Lucas Matisse, and yet there he is, incredibly, at 41, still in the line for big fights and a major world champion. The oldest, Sugar Ray Leonard, was more conservative than Manny Pacquiao, but yet Pacquiao's won more welterweight world titles than him and been a champion at an older age than Sugar Ray Leonard. That stylistically is pretty astounding. So for consistency, for beating guys that have got the age advantage, let's face it, the arena advantage, sometimes the judge advantage, right? And for you to beat, a guy that was 17 pounds heavier at the start of the decade to win, to clinch the 8th Division World title, to then go on to break the record as lineal world champion, to go on to break 2 records as welterweight world champion. Don't forget, he also equaled the record as 3-time welterweight champion, right? Then the oldest welterweight champion. And it's been done not just in a year or 2 or 5 years, it's been done for a stretch of the whole decade. The only period really where he had time out was when he had, the shoulder injury that he got after the Floyd Mayweather fight. But all in all, yes, Marquez got a victory over Manny, a devastating knockout. But Pacquiao also beat Marquez. He also dropped Mosley real hard. Mosley struggled physically more with Manny than he did with Floyd, right? Pacquiao beat Margarito. This is just a recap. Pacquiao lost to Floyd Mayweather, but bounced back and beat Timothy Bradley to win the lineal world title at welterweight, the record, the 5th time. And then he beats Keith Thurman, Adrian Broner, Lucas Matisse. It retires Lucas Matisse. Beats him that badly, Lucas Matisse is done with the sport. You tell me, is Conor McGregor a better win? Which I don't include. Floyd to me is 49-0. And I think Floyd's one of the best ever. Again, I think I rank Floyd Mayweather as much as above Roy Jones. As much as I like Roy Jones, I rate Floyd higher. But Conor McGregor is not up there. Beating Conor McGregor is not up there with beating Keith Thurman. Beating Conor McGregor is not up there with beating Lucas Matisse. I don't care what you think of Lucas Matisse. Beating Conor McGregor is not as good as fighting outside your comfort zone in Australia against the guy that just does not stop throwing in Jeff Horn. Beating Conor McGregor is not as good as beating Jesse Vargas or Timothy Bradley. Let's face it, is even beating Andre Berto at that stage better than what Manny's done recently? I don't think it is. So if Floyd had carried on and beaten some of these guys, especially beating a guy like Keith Thurman or Terence Crawford or whoever, yes, you might then begin to see how he could, clinch Fighter of the Decade. But for me, over the stretch of the decade, as I've said, it's Manny Pacquiao. He's been consistently producing. And although Canelo Alvarez has had some decisions gone in his favour when he shouldn't have done, Manny Pacquiao has had decisions go against him when he should have won them. So there's no argument that Manny Pacquiao has had the judges on his side. In fact, very much the other way around. Sometimes the judges have been dead against him. So Pacquiao has also fought the odds and beaten the odds more than the other two, what you would call A-side guys in the sport, in Canelo and Mayweather. There were 3 A-siders, weren't there? Pacquiao, Mayweather and Canelo. Pacquiao was the one who had the most to do. He was the cream that had to do the most to rise to the top. Because the system, to me, at times, was not for him. But yet, despite that, for 2 decades, he's consistently achieved stuff that no fighter in history has achieved. I'm not saying he's the greatest of all time, but in my opinion, for consistency and achievement, he's the best of this decade, just as he was the last decade. So, I'll conclude it there. For me, Manny Pacquiao is the fighter of the decade. You may disagree. Let me know down below who you see as greater. But for me, the Pac-Man gets it again. This is Champions of Champions Boxing Talk. I'm out, brother.